Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here. And do you guys remember when Disney took an iconic character from a beloved franchise and then returned him in a totally different context and then overshadowed the whole story with conversations about sexuality and children's entertainment? No, not that one. I'm talking about Baymax, the spin-off show based on the Big Hero 6 movie. Just dropped on Disney+. I've seen it. A lot of people are talking about this, so let's jump into it. So Baymax, this isn't a show that I intended to watch. I wasn't one I was planning to see, but again, if you guys are plugged into social media or the internet and all the crazy things that happen there, you know that this has been a show that's caused a lot of buzz, a lot of controversy, a lot of discussion. For some of the elements included in this, and just sort of dragged into some of the cultural warfare and all that kind of crazy stuff. So I thought all that was going on. I wanted to check it out and kind of see for myself what's going on and kind of walk through this and maybe help you and have a conversation with you guys about kind of what do we do about shows like this. But again, there is some controversial stuff in this show, and we will definitely get into that a little bit later. But just to kind of start things off with the show itself. So like I said, this is a spin-off show based on the 2014 animated film Big Hero 6, which is really good, kind of based on a Marvel property, and in some ways it was sort of like Marvel for kids, right before the MCU was as big and everywhere as it is now. And I think after that there was a show that kind of continued the story, but they really haven't done quite as much with this franchise and these characters as maybe they could have. There's definitely a lot of potential, sort of this like cool superhero, superpowered thing. So it is finally back here with Baymax on Disney+, but maybe not as a lot of audiences expected. Kind of gone are the superhero and the action and the adventure kind of vibes and stuff of the original. And this show, as the title suggests, focuses kind of specifically on the character of Baymax, which is sort of the white inflatable nurse robot that is sort of a side character in the original movie, and now he's sort of front and center. And really this, other than this sort of the character and some of the aesthetic of like the town, which is sort of like San Francisco, I think they call it like San Fran Tokyo. It's sort of like Tokyo and San Francisco mixed together. And some of it, and the main character from Big Hero 6 shows up at the very end of this show. But really, other than that, it's a very different type of show and kind of a minimalist, kind of real low key show that I really don't think would have caused any buzz or caused any kind of ripple, if not for some, like I said, for some of the controversial elements that we'll get into in just a second. But this is 6 episodes. It's short. This is, if you take out the opening credits and the end credits, this is about 6 episodes with about 5 or 6 minutes of content. So this is not like a 30 episode or minute episode or kind of some big long commitment. So I think even if you're someone that's not interested, but like me, just sort of want to see what's going on in the conversation, it'll probably take you maybe an hour to watch through this whole show. And it's kind of episodic. The first 5 episodes feature Baymax kind of going around and helping a different kind of patient with some kind of medical or mental health issue. Kind of each episode's a new person, and then the last episode they kind of all come in together for the finale. And again, the show has a few heartfelt moments. There is some humor, especially in episode 2. There's sort of a spunky elderly lady that caused me to chuckle. But really, probably for the most part, this show is about as exciting as you might expect for a show about a nurse robot going around helping people with like allergies and medical issues. And I think, at least for me, even beyond some of the more controversial stuff, it's hard to kind of put my finger on like who this show is for. Like a lot of the issues that are addressed seem very kind of more adult or mature. Like episode 1, he's helping a single mom kind of overcome being the pressure and being a workaholic and learn to just sort of take some her time and look after her own mental health. Another episode is helping like a grieving widow. I think episode 3 is dealing with a 12-year-old who gets her first period at school. And again, I don't think any of these topics necessarily are wrong or inappropriate to deal with. But more the question is this sort of whether this is a children's show aimed very much kind of for young kids is the appropriate vehicle to deal with some of that. And I think in a lot of ways, I feel like this show is going to be one that like certain adults praise for dealing with these sort of more mature themes, but that most kids just sort of tune out as dealing with stuff that just isn't relatable to their experience, and kind of strips away some of like the action elements or superhero stuff and kind of all the fun that drew kids to the series in the first place. And that's kind of a consistent problem throughout this show, is this sort of, I feel like it's in the packaging of like a kid's show, but it's dealing with stuff that I just don't think most kids are interested or understand, or at least not yet. And that's consistent all throughout the 6 episodes. But kind of episodes 3 and 4, that's where a lot of the cultural conversations have been happening around this movie. And at least for me, that's sort of what takes this from just sort of a head scratcher of, I don't really get the point of this show, to maybe something a little more concerning or alarming, or things that I think Christians need to wrestle with and think through. So with that said, let's jump into that part. So the content to consider: profanity. There's no profanity. There's no violence in this. Sexuality, yes, there is, if you've been following the cultural conversation. And I'll unpack that in just a second specifically, because I do think it kind of does blend more into like a worldview kind of beneath the surface thing, rather than just like content. So I'm just quickly kind of run through them. We'll unpack this a little bit more. But for sexuality, there's one transgender character. There is a same-sex couple that's heavily featured, their kind of romantic story. One of the episodes focuses on a woman's period, a 12-year-old girl that's has that at school, and there is other elements like the camera kind of focuses in on a bathroom with a sign like all-gender bathroom. So definitely elements almost specifically contained to 2 episodes, but there is quite a bit in there that I think we can unpack. So let's jump into that. So kind of beneath the surface, like there is some wholesome messages as far as, a show about Baymax helping people and kind of leaving a trail of compassion and investing in people, and when he's in need, people can kind of trace the all of his patients and kind of locate him. And so I think there is some wholesome stuff in there, but unfortunately, I think that's going to get overshadowed by kind of the sexuality talk, and probably the biggest kind of thing I think Christians need to engage with this film. Kind of the theme is really, maybe I would just call like normalizing sexuality. It's an icky issue, especially when it comes for kids. At least it's a controversial issues. But like I said, really specific to those episodes 3 and episode 4. So episode 3, this is the episode where Sophia, a 12-year-old girl, gets her first period, and the Baymax is kind of helping her overcome some of the shame and stigma of that. Which again, I think is fine. A lot of us had this conversation with Pixar's Turning Red. I think there is some value in normalizing some of the menstruation and stuff that is a natural part of growing up. The question is more, is it appropriate for a show aimed at like 6 and 7-year-olds? To be dealing with issues that they're still years away from experiencing, but kind of so that part didn't necessarily bother me as much. Kind of from there in that episode, later in the episode, Baymax goes to the store to get some pads and tampons for Sophia, and he's sort of asking the customers around him, for advice and stuff, and hey, what products do you recommend? And several people jump in and kind of give their suggestions. There's like a mom, there's a dad buying it for his daughter. And then there's a transgender character who's wearing like the transgender flag on their shirt to kind of remove any ambiguity about that it is a transgender character, and is very much sort of right in front. And again, a lot of this episode takes place in the bathroom as Baymax is with Sophia, which is several times zooms in on like this is an all gender bathroom, and at one point her male kind of friend, best friend, kind of looks in there, and so there's definitely that element, and that's sort of the one that's caused a lot of the conversation. Kind of in culture, that scene kind of got leaked, which kind of overshadows. There's also episode 4, which features kind of more very kind of upfront sexuality, and that's the story of it's a gay man who kind of runs his the family kind of fish soup business. It's like a food truck, and then he develops allergies, so he has to he struggles with what do I do now? All I know is fish, and now I can't do fish. I kind of need to move. I need to kind of change and adapt. And the character is very kind of, some of his, I guess, characterization is that he just resists all change. Like he just only serves soup, no crackers, no bread, no anything, just like his father did it. And at one point, one of the customers kind of mocking a little bit, playfully mocking, kind of says, sticking with tradition, kind of looking down on tradition. And kind of later, as this character is struggling with this, he says to Baymax, "But fish is all I know. My parents were courageous, but I'm just not." And Baymax comforts him, "Fear is a natural emotion with dealing with change," and then challenges him to be courageous, which on its own, that's a fine message. That's a fine message for even for kids. Hey, be courageous. Don't doubt yourself. But it's very clear that this whole conversation is sort of a very overt metaphor just for his kind of own homosexuality. This episode's kind of bookended by the same-sex relationship with the opening scene. The character is all flustered, talking to this other kind of Apple vendor that he obviously has this crush on. And then kind of as he goes through this journey of being courageous and change and adapting, the episode ends with him asking this vendor on a date, and obviously the start of this relationship. And I thought it was a sort of a motif throughout this is that the character has a spoon that's sort of been a soup spoon that's been passed down from from generations from his father with the words love, life, fish. And in a lot of ways, this sort of symbolically, I think, represents like tradition. This is sort of, this is his tie to sort of his ancestors and his family and his business and kind of all he knows. And kind of throughout their adventures with Baymax of, him getting help, the spoon snaps in half and kind of the words fish get removed and all that's left is love, life. And at least to me, it's sort of a very out there, obvious sort of this metaphor for kind of breaking away from his tradition. Just gotta love life. Forget sort of what came before you. Some of that traditional stuff that he gets kind of mocked for, and kind of after that spoon, sort of he embraces his homosexuality. And so again, it is very much there. It's very much, I think, a lot more front and center than even like the Lightyear movie was. So again, there's a lot of stuff in this to consider kind of on the surface of this, sort of with the relationships, but I think also just things for Christians to think through on a deeper, maybe more meta level of just, hey, sexuality in kids' movies. I think it's definitely reflecting a culture that sees identity through the lens of sex, kind of sees everything through the lens of sex. And I think a lot of Christians, and I think just parents in general, will probably have some issues with this. Hey, I don't think this is appropriate, any kind of sexuality at this level in a children's movie. So overall, again, this is I definitely see why this has become a controversial show, and it's just not a good show. It's not exciting. I think this is definitely one that I resist using like the words like agenda and everything's culture wars and crazy, but this show definitely plays out, at least to me, like this is just sort of there is sort of these messages and this sort of sexuality, and that the aim is less about just sort of entertaining kids and more about kind of working to normalize some of these different sexuality beliefs or ideologies or whatever it might be, kind of more, okay, here's sort of an adult mindset that we want kids to start being more comfortable with. And again, I think some of that, like the period, isn't necessarily, I think, a problem on its own, but when it comes to like the transgender character and the same sex and some of the other stuff, it definitely just sort of rub me the wrong way, and there just isn't enough exciting in this show to kind of justify wading through some of that. So this isn't necessarily a show I would recommend for Christians watching and letting their kids watch. But it is. It's up to you if you are going to do it, how you navigate that. But definitely be aware of some of the elements in this. But hey, let me know what you guys think. This is obviously a controversial show. I don't have the energy to deal with this sort of angry comments from either side, or rants or soapboxes about Disney or about Christians or whatever it is. But hey, if you have some, a respectful comment, or you want to join the discussion, how do we deal with some of this? Or if you just have questions about some of the elements in this movie that you want me to explain a little better, hey, I'd be happy to do it. Happy to have the conversation. I think as Christians, we should be talking about these sort of shows. And so again, encourage you, jump into the comment section. And hey, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Got a lot of other stuff, a lot of other movies, hopefully less controversial shows that we can geek out about and kind of work through some of the themes and stuff. So we'd love to have you join with what we're doing here. But thanks for watching, guys, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.